Greeting everyone. Before we begin, allow me to introduce myself. I am Nurathirah binti Shril. Together with my partner Balqis binti Hisham, we are pleased to present our research and findings on the topic of the effect of minimum wage policy on employment and business sustainability. So this presentation is prepared as part of the coursework for the subject Malaysian Economy under the guidance of our respected lecturer Puan Zakiah. So let's go. As for the introduction, there is a direct relationship between wages and the labour motivation. As the higher the wages, the more motivated the workforce is. In Malaysia, the government introduced the minimum wage order in 2012, implementing a minimum of RM900 in Peninsular Malaysia and RM800 in Sabah Sarawak since January 2013. And the latest amendment was effective on February 2025, which sets the minimum wage at RM1,700. So this initiative helps Malaysians cope with inflation and rising living costs. Subsequently, the objective ensures that towards the end of the case study, all the aims can be successfully achieved. Hence, we will focus on to study about the effect of minimum wage policy on employment rates, business sustainability, and to analyze initiatives taken by the government to improve the minimum wage policy. So it's important to acknowledge the advantage of minimum wage. Firstly is to protect the labour from unfair compensation, which is not compatible with the effort given for the job, and to decrease the issue of inequality among colleagues due to some bias by the employers. So it's basically want to promote social justice in the working environment. Secondly, it helps to reduce the poverty among Malaysians. Based on the Ministry of Human Resource, this increment could help people to decrease their pressure for their monthly budget to buy any essential needs and still can perform well in their productivity in the workplace. Thirdly, it also can boost the economic growth as household income has now increased, which means their purchasing power also increase. As they spend more, the GDP can increase and the production sector will work to meet the market demand. Lastly, this increment can attract the youth as wages offered are much more higher now. It encourages students who still studying to excel in their studies so that they can be absorbed to the companies of their liking based on the wages offered. Also, this can reduce the reliance on foreign workers or low-skilled workers in the economy. So what is human capital development? It's basically the labour which is defined as the action of human giving their physical and mental ability in order to produce any goods or services. It's also a crucial factor besides the land and capital in production, as no work can be carried out without the labour. But firstly, we need to have the idea of the sectors divided in the production sectors. Started with the primary sector that involved the activity of harvesting the natural resource of the earth, such as mining and farming. Secondary sector focus on the job related to the industrial and production of goods, like the factory workers and the car manufacturers, while the tertiary sector is mainly focused on providing services, such as doctors and teachers. Based on the graph in 1995, only 20% of total employment was involved in the primary sector, 33.3% involved in the secondary sector, and 47.7% of the total employment involved in the tertiary sector. But over the years, the world has been shifting its labour towards more involvement in the tertiary sector, as the government has no longer focused on any policy related to agriculture and only prioritized the palm oil plantation, as it is one of Malaysia's major contributors of export. Even so, the palm oil sector faced a drastic decline of labour to maintain the plantation due to the sector's transition, since the primary sector demand has dropped to 13.5%. Moving on to the secondary sector, even though the factories are still producing goods and exporting them to other countries, they no longer need a lot of labour to work for them, since there are advancement of technology by installing machines to boost their output and reduce human error. Hence, the percentage of the total employment has only increased approximately 1% for each year since 1995 until 2009. Lastly, the tertiary sector leads to increase in employment up to 11.8%, higher than the percentage in 1995. So fast forward to the 11 Malaysian plan, the percentage of the labour force will keep increasing to 15.7 million people working in 2020. In this period, the trend shows an increase in tertiary sector and a huge decline in primary sector. Not just that, the unemployment rate also, even though there is a slight increases, it's still considered as full employment, which is a good sign. However, due to COVID-19, the pandemic causing the people to lose their job and causing unemployment rate increased up to 5.3% in May 2020, and it is very concerning for our country. Despite the COVID-19 hit, the government still made a lot of initiatives to recover this flop, such as certified TVET under MQA. It aims to increase more skillful workers that have completed their training of Malaysian Skill Certificate level 1 to 3, besides to decrease the country dependency on foreign labour. Besides that, to introduce a specific policy for these foreign workers to leave the country after a specific period of time, and employers should comply with the policy to give more chances to the local labour. Based on the graph, it showed that Malaysia managed to maintain its GDP close to 10%. Yet there is two flops that I wanted to highlight, which is in 1998 is because the Asian financial crisis occurred, and 2020 is due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has severely disrupted almost all production sector across the world. Then fast forward to the present year of 2024, Malaysia's socio-economic context is marked by changes and growth, with the economy growing at 5.1% compared to the previous year. Then the employment rate showing it is at a good state. Then the service sector still managed to contribute the biggest percentage to the GDP, which is 56.8%, and continue to grow, while mining and quarrying still showing a decline trend to only 0.7%. So there is one study that is very related to this study case, which is named impact of minimum wage on labour market institution in developing countries, a systematic review. The study is about assessing the impact and effectiveness of applying minimum wage into that particular developed country, such as China, United Kingdom and Myanmar. As for the policymaker, which means the government itself, the review discussed if raising the wage could help people to get jobs or cause them to lose their job. As real example, we have Honduras, which effect a small amount of job losers, while in India there's an increase in both wages and jobs, especially in the cities. Secondly, the effect on the companies would cause the labour cost to go up and profitability to go down, as the focus are now to meet the minimum requirement of wage. Thirdly, the most positive impact can be seen to workers themselves. More income could help them to improve their living standards, like in Thailand. And besides that, even though they felt more secure with their job to receive higher wages, they still have to be aware there is risk for them to be expelled if not compatible with the company standard, just like in UK.
Now we're moving on to problem identification. Malaysia's minimum wage policy was introduced to tackle socio-economic challenges. Yet, despite government efforts, many low-wage workers continue to struggle with basic living costs, especially in urban regions where expenses are significantly higher. The core issue lies in the gap between the minimum wage and the actual cost of living. Essential needs such as housing, food, healthcare, and education remain out of reach for many low-income families. So this disparity places additional pressure on public welfare systems and deepen economic inequality. Additionally, the current framework does not account for the differences in living costs across regions, causing workers in high-cost areas to suffer the most. So if wages are not aligned with real living costs, it becomes nearly impossible for workers to achieve financial stability, and this traps them in cycles of poverty.
So, started off with population, which in this study case will be referring to the citizen of Malaysia. Secondly, the source of data will be the secondary data such as the Malaysia 11 plan and etc. Thirdly, the research methodology is qualitative data and no interviews and surveys are conducted.
When minimum wages are adjusted, the effects extend beyond basic survival. Studies by UNDP and UNICEF Malaysia show that wage increases lead to improvements in housing stability, healthcare access, and school enrollment rates. A higher income allows families to afford proper housing, nutritious food, and essential healthcare services. This reduces the risk of homelessness, malnutrition, and health complications, especially in the low-income communities. Moreover, financial stability means that more children can attend school consistently, setting them on a path for better opportunities. This highlights that minimum wage is not just about survival. It's a step toward economic mobility and long-term growth. So these immediate benefits are impactful, but the true strength of a well-implemented minimum wage is seen in its long-term effects on society. Long-term benefits of fair wages are evident. When workers earn enough to meet their needs, it supports socio-economic mobility and stabilizes the workforce. This creates a ripple effect. Families can invest in education and health, it breaking the cycle of poverty for future generations. Globally, countries like Sweden, Norway, and Denmark have demonstrated the effectiveness of strong minimum wage policies. These nations pair fair wages with robust social safety nets, significantly reducing poverty while maintaining sustainable economic growth. So for Malaysia, adopting similar policies could lead to stronger communities and a more resilient workforce. This proves that economic stability does not have to come at the expense of worker welfare.
The government has been very proactive to elevate the production sector and the welfare of the employees. Hence, the government has come up with a policy named Minimum Wage Order in July 2012 and enforced in January 2013. It is a legal order from the government ordering the employers to pay at least the minimum rate of wage to the employees to support the workers with lower monthly income to afford more essential for their daily basis. Adding more, there's a few amendments to the order in which the rate has increased in a specific year. After the introduction rate, the minimum wage was keep on increasing until the latest amendment made based on Malaysia Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim emphasized that this initiative is to help to sustain social stability besides to reduce the income gap among employees in the country. As the rate has changed, the daily and the hourly rates also have altered. Hence, for those who work on a daily basis, they are not required to get 1,700 ringgit at the end of the month, but the wage is calculated by the number of days they work in a week based on the table. Lastly, for those who work hourly like part-timers, they will receive 8.72 ringgit per hour for the period of time they work. To highlight the brilliant action by the government, they phased out the order into 2 phases to help the business, especially the small one, to adjust their finances to meet the minimum wage order, which the first one on February and the second phase is in August. But there is a specific group that are exempted from this order, which is domestic workers. This caused concern among labour rights group, and they hope for another amendment to be made specifically focused on this labour. as this increment is crucial information that has been informed publicly through media. Any employer known to not comply with orders can be subjected to penalties under the National Wages Consultative Council Act 2011, Act 732. The maximum fine will be 20,000 ringgit and the possible imprisonment maximum to 5 years. Lastly, based on MOHR, the order of this minimum wage should not be an excuse by the companies to use it as a benchmark for entry level, as these groups of workers should be paid according to their qualification and expertise to prevent issues such as unfair compensation or underpayment. Also, this helps the employers to choose the most compatible employee to be paid according to the wages paid and the skill offered.
To truly address inequality, Malaysia needs to rethink its minimum wage strategy. High-income nations have proven that fair wages can drive economic growth without sacrificing business stability. Yet in Malaysia, certain groups remain underserved. Women, migrant workers, and rural communities often face lower wages with limited protections. To address this, 3 key solutions are necessary. The first one, regionally differentiated wages that reflect the varying cost of living. Next, stricter enforcement mechanism to prevent exploitation and ensure compliance. Lastly, enhanced protections for vulnerable groups, including domestic workers. So these measures would promote a fairer labour market and build a more equitable economic model. So lastly, let's look at how these changes could shape Malaysia's economic future. To conclude, Malaysia's minimum wage policy has evolved, but it still falls short of matching living costs, particularly in urban areas. Incremental adjustments have been helpful, but they are not enough. For the policy to be effective, wages need to be reviewed and adjusted annually to reflect inflation and regional cost of living. We recommend the inclusion of domestic workers who are often left out of wage protections. Strengthening social safety nets would also provide critical support for vulnerable communities. So by adopting global best practices and prioritizing human capital development, Malaysia can build a sustainable and fair economic future. A fair minimum wage not only improves individual lives, but also strengthens communities and drives long-term growth. And that concludes our analysis on the effects of minimum wage policy on employment and business sustainability in Malaysia. Through strategy improvements and a focus on human capital, Malaysia has the potential to build a more just and resilient economy. Thank you.